Good afternoon and welcome to Capital Account. I'm Lauren Lister here in Washington, D.C. These are your headlines for Thursday, June 7th, 2012. Ben Bernanke testified on Capitol Hill today. Of course, everyone was looking for language to suggest whether or not the Fed will engage in more stimulus and if we will see QE3. Take a listen.
We have a number of different options, and we'd have to consider each of them and the costs and benefits associated with them. But at this point, I really can't say that anything is completely off the table.
Ooh, was that a threat? Well, we'll find out soon enough. The Fed meets later this month, so if they do reach into their toolbox for an instrument to screw your financial freedom, how can you prepare? We'll try to answer that. Now, this was another hot topic with Bernanke on the Hill today. I'm talking, of course, about what's been dubbed the fiscal cliff of tax cuts expiring and spending cuts set to kick in all next year at around the same time. Now, the concern is that Washington will fly right off that cliff with no parachute, except maybe a few golden ones for the usual Wall Street executives. And meanwhile, the ratings agency Fitch is warning it could cut the U.S.'s AAA credit rating if Congress and the White House don't come up with a credible fiscal consolidation plan. So deflationary threats looming, but is a credit collapse unavoidable? Mike Maloney is here with his deflation to inflation forecasts. And gold's recent slump has the mainstream media talking about a gold bear market threat. But guess who's reportedly been buying? Billionaire hedge fund manager George Soros, and he is not the only heavy hitter. We'll talk about it. Let's get to today's Capital Account. Federal Reserve Chairman, the central planner-in-chief, Ben Bernanke, trotted to the Hill today to give another one of his economic outlook speeches as traders, of course, listened carefully for any news that might give them an edge on their daily speculations, hoping to make a quick buck. A quick buck, it seems, is all that Americans can hope to make these days, with interest rates suppressed at near zero for almost 4 years now, forcing more and more hardworking people to speculate on riskier assets if they would like any sort of return on their money at all. Now, for those who are less inclined to spin the roulette wheel, there is always the comfort of your mattress, which guarantees a return of at least some of your money, whatever is not confiscated, through what Mr. Bernanke so euphemistically calls quantitative easing. We call it counterfeiting. More confrontational folks may refer to it as outright theft. Some Fed officials, though, most notably Fed Governor Janet Yellen, says there may be more ahead. They've been hinting that the central bank may ease. Yellen, in a recent speech to the Boston Economic Club, advocated for an extended period of highly accommodative monetary policy. These are, of course, more euphemisms as part of the central banker's efforts to revive the economy, believing the economic future of the country rests on their Atlantean shoulders. Look at Ben Bernanke there. But does it really? And what if you don't trust policymaking academics with track records as bad as the Fed's to run the economy anyway? For example, listen to Bernanke today talking about the bank stress tests.
The tests also showed that even in an extremely adverse hypothetical economic scenario, most of those firms would remain able to provide credit to U.S. households and businesses.
Really? Based on what? The assumptions for an adverse scenario that the Fed came up with the wisdom out of their own academic papers combined with what banks are theoretically supposed to do? Exactly. So what if you just want to work, save, invest, and live without scanning frantically through policy statements, press releases, and Federal Reserve minutes every time you go to open your wallet? Well, our next guest has some solutions of his own that maybe will be a little more concise than those Fed documents. He's Mike Maloney, founder of goldsilver.com and author of Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver. It's part of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series, and just the person to talk about all of this. So first, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Lauren. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's nice to see you. It looks like a beautiful day in LA. Great day to talk about the Fed, I guess, because there's some sunshine where you are, maybe less if Bernanke eases, but that is what everybody is looking at, and whether or not there's going to be QE3. And this has really been the speculation or the question since at least QE2 ended, which was well over a year ago. That was in 2011. So we did see Operation Twist. My question to you, aside from the obvious, which is that QE has not worked and has produced a lot of unintended consequences, in your view, is there maybe any other reason why Bernanke has not been able to initiate QE3 yet?
Well, if he did it too soon on the heels of QE2, I think you would have seen gold shoot for the moon, and you would see oil back up above 140 and the U.S. economy grinding to a halt because just simply from the anticipation of inflation. They had to, right now we've got this great pullback in gold, which is, to me, is just another buying opportunity. Silver, still hasn't even reached its 1980 high of $50, and here we are in 2012 with these huge stimulus packages. I think QE3 is an inevitability. It's just a matter of time. Ben Bernanke made all of his intentions very clear even before he became Fed governor in some of his speeches and papers. He's basically an inflationist. Alan Greenspan had one solution to every problem: print currency. Ben Bernanke is of the same school.
Yeah, so we can have more to come that we can expect in your view and my view and a lot of people's views. So let's talk about inflation, because that's something that you just brought up, and Bernanke, of course, talked about it today, said inflation is steady, said he's not worried about deflation right now. I want to bring up your predictions for what would happen during the years after 2008 that you wrote about in your book. Back then you said, in the end, I think we're in for a wild roller coaster ride with a few whipsaws thrown in. First, the threat of deflation, followed by a helicopter drop, followed by big inflation, followed by real deflation, and then followed by hyperinflation. So, Mike Maloney, how has this played out, and where are we now?
Well, I think, that was written before the financial crisis in 2008. And the financial crisis of '08, I think, was that threat of deflation. And all of these quantitative easings are the overreaction, the helicopter drops that I was predicting when I wrote that. And we've seen a reflation of the financial sector, of the stock market, of oil. But it hasn't done anything to stimulate the true economy. It isn't trickling, all of this currency that Ben Bernanke whipped up is basically sitting on banks' balance sheets. And it's not... when you look at money supply statistics, it's not part of the circulating medium right now, this currency that he whipped up. All it did was inflate the financial sector and sort of just put lipstick on this pig.
Mm-hmm. So then where are we in regards to deflation?
Well, I think we're seeing some true deflation of the currency supply right now. The number of dollars that exist is a reflection of total credit. When they create credit, they're creating dollars. And the total credit supply peaked back in 2007 at about 53 trillion. We're up now to 54 trillion. But most of that, that increase, there's a $2 trillion increase that was part of all these quantitative easings and bailouts. And that, like I said, is sitting on the bank's balance sheets. If you look at base money is a measurement of currency in circulation plus the cash that's sitting in the commercial banks' checking accounts at the Federal Reserve. Mm-hmm. And before the crisis of '08, 97% of base money was out there in circulation, and the public was using it. It was actually that's what creates the economy. He did these bailouts, and now, you know, it took 200 years to go from $0 in existence to $825 billion. And then in just the past couple of years, it's gone from 825 to about 2.8 trillion.
And let's go ahead and bring that up, because we have a view of base money. Go ahead, keep going. Go ahead and keep going. I just wanted to bring up base money for our viewers. If we could back up to the previous chart that we had in the control room there, base money, so that our viewers can see what he's talking about. Okay, so continue on. You were talking about the expansion of base money and its impact. What is that?
Yeah, well, the huge increase that you see on that chart is the bailouts and the quantitative easings. And really, it stimulated the financial sector, but it hasn't trickled down into the general economy where it circulates. One of the Fed used to publish something called M3. They no longer publish it. Everybody uses M2 now instead of M3. But these are measurements of the highly circulating portion of the currency supply, where the public is actually getting the benefit of the currency. It doesn't just measure cash in circulation, but it also measures checking account balances and some small-sized time deposits. And what you see is that it's shrinking a little since 2008. But then, if you deduct base money is a component of M2. If you take out that base money component, it shows that the bailouts that Bernanke is doing aren't doing anything to trickle down into the general economy. The quantitative easings have no result. We're seeing a contraction of M2. When you take out the base money, there's a 25% contraction in this aggregate of the currency supply. This has never happened except for the onset of the Great Depression. This is huge, alarming news. This is true monetary deflation that we're seeing here. Ben Bernanke is fighting it, but he can't control where all the dollars he creates, where they go. And they generally go into some, like you said, unintended consequences. They're going into an unintended place. And they'll create a bubble here or a bubble there, but they're not going to have the effect that he desires. And the only thing that will work is just to allow the free markets to work and to stop having the audacity and arrogance to try and to think that he knows more than the free market. The free market is the sum total of all the transactions going on in the economy. He thinks he knows more, and he thinks he can decide what the quantity of currency should be and what the price of currency should be, the interest rates. That's a lot of arrogance, and it just won't work.
It is a lot of arrogance, and when we get back from a break, we'll take a quick one. I want to talk to you about when the public, or how the public, is going to feel this contraction that you're talking about in this deflation. So we will have much more with Mike Maloney, author and founder of goldsilver.com, after the break. Also, still ahead, what gold slump? Some heavy hitters are ignoring the bear market threat from gold's recent downturn. We'll tell you who are the so-called gold bugs in loose change. But first, your closing market numbers.
What drives the world?
The fear-mongering used by politicians.
Who makes decisions?
Considerable breakthrough has already been made.
Who can you trust?
No one who is imbued with a global missionary zeal.
Where are we heading?
State-controlled capitalism is called fascism.
When nobody dares to ask, we do. RT, question more.
You know how sometimes you see a story and it seems so whole and complete, you think you understand it, and then you glimpse something else. You hear or see some other part of it and realize everything you thought you knew, you don't know? I'm Tom Hartman. Welcome to The Big Picture.
Welcome to the Alona Show, where you'll get the real headlines with none of the mercy. The problem with the mainstream media today is that they're completely disconnected from the viewers and from what actually matters to those viewers. And so that's why young people just don't watch TV anymore. If they want news, they go online and read it. But we're trying to take those stories that people actually care about and transfer them back to TV.
Welcome back. We're talking about the Fed's failed attempts to stimulate the economy despite calls for it that we heard on the Hill today with Ben Bernanke there. So before we go back to our guest, I want to bring up a chart that shows what he was talking about before the break. Okay, this shows M2, which includes base money. So base money reflects the Fed's attempts to broaden the money supply to get that money to the real economy. But what you can see is that as the Fed has contributed to that increase in base money, what you see is a contraction in M2. So let's bring Mike Maloney back in and ask him when and how the public is going to feel this, if they already are. So again, he's founder of goldsilver.com and author of Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver, which is part of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series. So Mike Maloney, before the break, you were talking about this contraction that hasn't happened since, you said, the Great Depression. So when and how does the public feel this? And is there a lag in between the charts and when it does affect them?
Yeah, there is. And, you know, Ben Bernanke really doesn't, he's gone down a path where he doesn't really have a choice. He's going to have to continue all of this loose monetary policy and stimulus. And what you're seeing happen here, that contraction in M2, means that what the general public is feeling, their wages are not really increasing. Their portion of the economy isn't rising and doing great. What's happening is everything that is being created is going into the financial sector. Mm-hmm. So we can have a deflation and a slowing of the economy, a deflation in the number of dollars available for the public to use. True inflation or deflation is either the expansion or contraction of the currency supply, the available currency for the public to use, which creates the economy. Mm-hmm. If he continues with quantitative easing and ramping up the base money and the portion that the financial sector uses for all of their bets, basically, mm-hmm. What you're going to see is the price of commodities going up while wages are stagnant or falling. And so you'll be seeing deflation in the public sector mm-hmm. of the currency supply, inflation in the financial sector and where they place their bets, the commodities and so on. And it's a recipe for disaster, I believe.
Well, along those lines, as you're talking about the Fed's attempts to inflate, but that at the same time you could still see deflation in the money that the public has, let's bring up their attempts to keep trying, okay? Janet Yellen, who is the vice chair of the Board of Governors at the Fed, just in a speech last night said that, as she discussed this evening, prolonged weakness in the housing sector remains one of the several serious headwinds facing the U.S. economy. And she says, given these headwinds, I believe that a highly accommodative monetary policy will be needed for quite some time to help the economy mend. So my question about these headwinds that housing are, is this a headwind simply because it's about all the debt in housing that's dragging down the economy and houses are just the conduit for this borrowing binge?
Yeah, it is. It is this debt bubble dragging down the economy. But what amazes me is that the people that are running the economy don't know anything about economics. This headwind, you got to look at what created the wind. Okay, the stock market crashed back in 2000, and Alan Greenspan created a very accommodative policy and basically goosed the money supply. And that caused the real estate bubble. The real estate bubble is trying to deflate and to seek equilibrium, where you have the right balance of the number of homes that are available on the market and the demand for those homes. It's that simple. It's a supply-demand equilibrium that it's trying to seek. And they're not allowing the free markets to work and to clear out all of this excess inventory and so on. They're going to try and goose the economy somehow, and it always has unintended consequences. People have just been burned on stocks twice in the last decade, and they just got burned on real estate. There's another asset class that all of this currency can flow into, and that's commodities and precious metals. And I think that since people just got burned on the other asset classes, that this is where the next great bubble is destined to be. And I think Ben Bernanke is just, the pawn that is fulfilling the destiny that we're about to see of gold and silver rising to cover the currency supply.
Well, and also, too, talking about precious metals and gold and silver, we have a slump right now in gold prices, and we have people saying, oh, this is a gold bear market, and we see other things that are considered safe havens, people running to them. We see treasuries at record low yields, and we see people running to German bonds. So what gives you the confidence, looking at history, that gold is the best insurance against the liabilities of fiat currencies?
Right. Well, the average person does not understand that a treasury is an IOU. So all of these bonds, they are all IOUs. They rely on the performance of a counterparty. And what you're seeing is counterparties like, for instance, the government of Greece, they're not as reliable as we once thought they were. And so people are running around from different forms of, one form of debt to another form of debt, buying and selling different IOUs. And eventually they run to the ultimate safe haven, and that's the precious metals. But, yeah.
And that
the whole thing is just laughable.
Yeah, and that's the future that you think is going to play out. I appreciate you being on the show to spell out how and why. And thanks for being on. That was Mike Maloney. He's author and founder of goldsilver.com. All right, let's wrap up with loose change. We ended on gold. Let's start on gold, because the recent slump, as I said, has some in the mainstream media talking about a gold bear market threat. But guess who's reportedly been buying?
But we are at an inflection point. After the expiration of the 3-month window, the markets will continue to demand more, but the authorities will not be able to meet their demands.
He, of course, is talking about what the markets require in order for the euro system to remain stable, not collapse, people to not lose faith entirely. So George Soros, meanwhile, has been buying up gold, and SEC filings shows it. He's not the only one. Hedge fund manager John Paulson is also has the biggest stake in SPDR Gold Trust, which is the largest exchange-traded product backed by bullion. Now, this is all according to Bloomberg. So, hey, these heavy hitters are gold bugs.
Yeah, off memory right now, if I remember correctly, Soros was buying the gold ETF. Paulson was either in the ETF, GLD, or he had been buying physical. One of these two guys, or both, had been unloading at one point. So the fact that they're getting back on is interesting. I think also the fact that this coincides with Soros' speech means that maybe he's going short credit, he's going long gold, he's going short fiat currency. So, these guys could potentially, these guys work on the margin. So if Soros is right, if this is true and Soros is betting on gold and he's right, then we're in for a real storm of sorts for the fiat money system.
Why are storm in quotes?
Well, I was going to say a something storm, a beep storm.
Oh, got it.
But I didn't know if the guys would be able to bleep me out in time, guys, so.
Shannon, you want to add anything while we have Soros and Paulson flowing away on a gold balloon?
I mean, they're pretty much golden, and no, Dimitri, we cannot bleep you out that quickly.
Okay. Speaking of bleeping out, or maybe I don't know, breaking up. Take a look at what ended up on live TV if you haven't seen it already today. Okay, this is a member of the neo-Nazi Golden Dawn Party, which now has seats in parliament in Greece. This is the spokesperson attacking a prominent female member of the Communist Party in Greece on live TV. Take a look.
Οι οποίοι θα πάνε τη χώρα 500 χρόνια πίσω. Άντε βρε νούμερο. Άντε βρε νούμερο. Θα πάμε 500 χρόνια πίσω τη χώρα. Όχι.
Can you believe that footage? It almost looks like a mockery.
Yeah, well, this guy's a he's a loser. He's a criminal. All right. Well, first of all, he was accused.
So criminals are now have government.
This guy's a psychopath.
Your country's parliament.
He's a psych. By the way, this apparently is his night job. We found this on the internet. Spank me. Actually, that's kind of a Latin using for Greek. I'm not going to say what it is, but in any case, yeah.
So he has some other people that
don't like him. This guy's a real piece of work,
sure.
and if you can see, Liana Canelli, the woman that he hit, the member of parliament for the Communist Party, stood and took all three of those. So I suggest that Ilya go hit the gym a little bit, guy. Kind of, get some, since you couldn't even knock out Liana after 3 good smacks. And
tough lady.
Yeah, she's tough, and this guy's a wimp, just like the rest of his gang. They talk tough, but they're Nazis.
Well, the thing is, and we're going to move on, is that obviously there's a huge stigma about the fact that this is a neo-Nazi group, and they live up to it. They live up to everything that you would imagine. He's hitting a woman on live TV.
Yeah,
I mean, that's brutish.
And he's the spokesperson, so that's a great.
Yeah, there you go. That's the most well-behaved, you have to assume. Moving on, a new study by Career Builder is confirming what many other studies have realized about our jobs. Take a look.
Today we're talking about the contribution that your job may be putting to your problems with weight.
Yes, obviously it's good news when you're employed, but the bad news is your job can be making you fat, especially if you sit all day.
So work can make you fat. I guess that's one bone that you can throw to unemployed Americans. However, according to the study, 44% of workers that were surveyed have gained weight at their current job. I don't know. Any personal anecdotes?
Okay, so, all right, so Arden should know this story was picked by Shannon because she knows that I'm on a diet because I gained weight since I started working here. And it's true, I've gained weight. This is a very stressful job. I go for ice cream on a regular basis, and I've already told the person downstairs not to let you know if I actually go down to get ice cream.
Okay. So. Well, Dimitri, some other career opportunities you could look into. Actually, no, these are ones that will compound your problems. Being a travel agent, an attorney, a judge, a social worker. All of those. Greater likelihood of gaining weight. But Dimitri, sorry, being a TV producer wasn't on there.
I don't buy it. Shannon said that too. I don't believe it. It's not possible because this is one of the most stressful jobs on the planet, okay? We have to work all day long to come out on air, and I have to look good. I have to look good on air for everybody. I don't think so. I want to eat, and I want to eat away my problems, okay? I don't want to be on air here.
All right, I'll go get you some ice cream after the show because that's all we have time for. Thanks so much for tuning in.
That's what I want.
And don't forget to come back tomorrow for more.
Strawberry cheesecake.
In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Lauren Lister. You can heckle Dimitri on his Twitter account, too, at Covering Delta. And give us feedback on the show at youtube.com/capitalaccount. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.